Okay, so we are ready to start with part two in nutrition for athletes, and we're moving on to micronutrients now. So we're stopping our discussion about the actual fuel for work with respect to calories and energy out, and we're kind of shifting gears now to micronutrition, equally important, but in a little bit of a different way. So instead of looking at the actual fuel for the processes, we're looking at the micronutrients, the vitamins and the minerals that actually propel and enhance all sorts of different processes that are, in our case, what we're going to look at related to growth and development and human performance. So at the basic level, let's look at micronutrients as the vitamin and mineral content that's really vital for performing all body processes. And we're going to really focus on growth, development, physical performance. So things that we can kind of relate back there. So there's a whole slew of other things that the micronutrients that we refer to in this presentation today are also responsible for. We're really just going to touch on those that we can trace right back to human performance, so that we kind of stay along the same lines of interest and relationship to sport and performance and physical activity. So let's start by identifying our essential vitamins and our essential minerals. Essential vitamins on the left in the blue column, starting with vitamin A, C, D, E, and there are 6 B vitamins there as well, 12, 6, 1, 3, 2, and 9. We'll talk about each of their roles. And then we're going to look at essential minerals as well. Calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, and zinc. So we're going to go through all of these today. You're going to need to remember what they're there for, but hopefully by the end of this, what we can really get through is that each of these plays a pretty vital role in one or more really important processes that are directly linked to performance, growth, and development. So it's not just getting fuel in the form of calories. We need to make sure that we're also balancing and making sure that we're getting a sufficient supply when it comes to these essential vitamins and minerals too. So starting with vitamins, we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time here. I'm certainly not going to read every single line in this chart, but I would certainly encourage you to spend some time with it on your own and maybe look here a little bit longer, especially if we might be able to start to link some of these vitamins and their sources to an area of potential deficiency or an area for potential improvement in our own situations. So we're just going to pick on one here, and I'll take vitamin B12 because I know it's a fairly common micronutrient that is deficient in a lot of athletes. We look at our sources of B12 as being fish, red meat, cheese, eggs, fortified cereals, and other fortified foods. That means foods that are basically after being processed, they're strengthened with this vitamin B12. They have vitamin B12 literally added into them synthetically. And what B12 is responsible for, it helps with the process of red cell production and really cell functionality holistically. But let's talk about red cells specifically and their role. The role of the red blood cell being to carry oxygen to muscles that are in demand for it. And right away we can say, okay, well, if somebody's deficient in B12, and they're going to be deficient in their oxygen carrying capacity. So their body's ability to deliver oxygen-rich blood to muscles as they are screaming for it while you do hard work. And so despite putting all of that energy into your body at the substrate level, enough fats, enough proteins, enough carbohydrates, if we're not paying attention to something as simple as vitamin B12, we could already be limiting our performance. And so we'll use this chart the same way we just did with the example of B12 and think about other areas that might apply to you with respect to the sources and a possible deficiency and how it could be related to something as the growth and development column suggests. We look at the minerals now. We see calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium. Again, we're not going to go through every single one here, but let's pick on another one. Let's talk about magnesium. Magnesium is another fairly common deficiency in North American athletic populations. We do get magnesium from whole grain foods, nuts, seeds, green leafy vegetables, potatoes, beans. So it seems easy enough to get it, but whether or not we're getting enough is probably another question. What magnesium is responsible for is nervous system and muscular system functionality. And a lot of the time in sport development, especially with strength and conditioning, we talk about something called the neuromuscular system, the fancy term for getting the nervous system and the muscular system to work together to optimize things like recruitment, activation, proprioception, so those sudden movements that we rely on in certain situations that are very reactive, those are all related to the neuromuscular system's functionality. And if that system is entirely reliant on magnesium levels to be optimal, we can easily see how our performance could be affected fairly negatively almost right away by something as simple as a magnesium deficiency. All right, so just again, looking at these charts in whole, don't just take one or two minerals from them. Give yourself a few minutes to actually look through them and understand these minerals and their sources and how they relate back to growth and development, and think about how, is there any possibility that that's something that I should be concerned about, in my own individual situation. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with athletes who've kind of had a chance to sit down and look at something like this and made their own kind of connect the dots conclusion that, wow, I'm probably, a little deficient in this area or that area, based on the fact that I know I don't get a lot of those sources. And I definitely know that my performance in this area is currently suffering. And now I'm not a doctor, so I'm not the final step in this diagnostic process by any means. But usually giving this a little bit of food for thought, for example, is enough to get somebody into the door of their family doctor to request some blood work to see if they are for sure maybe deficient in one of these areas. And that's always the first step in kind of rectifying it. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail later on. But having a look at these and getting to know the functionality of vitamins and minerals, their sources, and how they relate to growth, development, and performance is a huge step that every athlete who's serious about their performance should be taking. All right, so if we're looking at the deficiencies really, really quickly, and I just kind of want to show you how this will work for you as a fairly good quick reference that you can just kind of flip back and forth between these next two slides. Here are the vitamins, here are the minerals, and if we just flip one ahead, we see right away that the deficiencies in those vitamins and minerals are right here. So if we're just flipping back and forth between the two, we see the vitamins, minerals on the left and right columns, and their deficiencies, what we would expect if we were deficient in any one of these vitamins or minerals. So again, let's just pick on vitamin D, for example, in the vitamin column. So it's the third one down, and we see right away things like depression, fatigue, and joint pain. All three of those would be very, very evident in an athletic context. We'd see things like depression would result in a low motivation to train. We'd see fatigue in a variety of ways. We don't even need to really talk about why fatigue is so easy to see, and joint pain very, very common in athletes deficient in vitamin D. If we look at things like on the mineral side, maybe let's choose potassium this time around, second from the bottom, nausea, cramping, and irregular heart rhythm. So again, these are almost like the symptoms or the signs of a deficiency that we might be able to recognize as an athlete. So again, kind of helpful to get to know this tool here, kind of flipping back and forth between these two slides and understanding what the deficiencies would be. Maybe picking up on a symptom early would be enough reason, again, to get yourself into a general practitioner, request some blood work be done, and make sure that you weren't deficient, or that if you were on the right track to rectifying it, to fixing it, either through changes to your diet or supplementation, right? So going forward, we always want to ask our question, what does the athlete has a job in this? What can the athlete do to make sure that micronutrients are well monitored and they're getting the right help they need? And obviously we talked about blood work already, and that's always the first step. We don't really validate or verify anything until we have some conclusive evidence that suggests, yeah, you are actually iron deficient, or you are low in B12 or ferritin or something related to iron, and something like that is going to come from a conclusive blood report. And it's after that we might consider, and I want to emphasize the word might, we might consider supplementation. That's my second graphic there, second from the left. So we might consider getting a little bit of help from something like an over-the-counter multivitamin or a B12 supplement or an iron supplement. But what's probably better than that is the third image from the left, which is getting the help of somebody who might be able to point us in the right direction with dietary changes. Nothing is going to be better than getting these sources naturally if it's possible. So if there's something that we can do with respect to our diet and making a positive change to increase something that we're deficient in or balance out our micronutrients a little bit better, there's a whole profession of people out there that are designed to help us with that. And I'll do even one better before I leave this slide. I'll suggest that turning yourself into a little bit more of a knowledgeable person when it comes to nutrition and micronutrient values, and being able to kind of be self-sufficient in that category is probably the very best solution. So that's what my last graphic on the very far right represents. Learning a little bit more about this will go a long way, and this is quite literally the reason we're doing what we're doing right now. And this is why athletes should be studying things like micronutrients, not just the macronutrient side of nutrition and making sure they're getting enough fuel at the right substrates, but also at the micronutrient level, what really needs to happen to optimize performance, to optimize health, to optimize chances of longevity, reduce risk of injury, and the list goes on and on and on. There are 1,000 good reasons to pick up the right books and learn about this kind of stuff yourself. So that is the end of part 2 on micronutrients. I hope it was helpful and gave you a little bit more to think about with respect to your own current situations. I would strongly encourage everyone to go back and use those tools that kind of demonstrate the vitamins and minerals, what their sources are, and how deficiencies could be influencing them, and maybe even running a little bit of your own self-diagnostic report before deciding that, yeah, no, I don't have any of these signs or symptoms. I feel pretty good. Or, hey, maybe this is a good enough reason for me to maybe finally go into the doctor's office and request some blood work be done. And I'll tell you right now that is one of the most common things in maintaining and monitoring of athletic performance, is making sure that people are eating well, not just at the macronutrient level, but the micronutrient level as well. So thanks for watching part 2. I will look forward to showing you part 3 in the near future. As always, if you have any questions, send me a message, derekvirgo@wiredsb.ca, or you can get in touch with me through the website, strongerbcss.ca. Bye for now.